Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Volatility. Now, we actually have some good news today as far as trade, or at least what sounds like good news, with Scott Bessent, a couple comments from Trump and Caroline Leavitt that actually suggest trade deals are coming this week. But I think the lack of a China tariff pause is starting to, hit markets a little bit, because that's step one to negotiating with China. And I do think it is coming. But before it happens, I'm not surprised to see a little bit of downside pressure on markets like you are seeing now. At the time of recording this video, S&P is down about 0.5%. You're also sitting like right at your 300-day moving average. You actually broke above that at one point today. And then the sellers stepped in and pushed markets lower. But let me tell you now, when that pause on China comes, on China tariffs, the S&P is going to skyrocket. And I think that could happen this week. But with that said, let's go ahead and get into all of your news today for the broader markets. Nonetheless, Scott Bessent had a CNBC interview today. He says that it is up to China to de-escalate on tariffs. And he says that all aspects of government are in contact with China. He says that many countries presented very good proposals on trade. And he says, quote, many of the 17 important trading partners have made very good proposals to avert US tariffs. Bessent says that Europeans are panicked about the strength of the euro, and that's why he expects the ECB will continue to cut rates. Scott Bessent says that it is a complicated relationship with China, but that he is sure China wants to de-escalate. Now, this one's actually funny. Bessent says he was surprised when the markets rallied after remarks at JP Morgan's conference. He didn't say anything new. Bessent says that negotiations with Asian trading partners is going very, very well. I mean, you could group like Bangladesh in here, even India, Thailand, Vietnam. I mean, these are countries that do a ton of manufacturing for US-based companies. It's really the region that got hit the hardest via these reciprocal tariffs. And it's the region that we count on really the most for cheap labor, and where a lot of US companies have already invested a ton of money for that reason. So it's really the whole Asia region that is important. China's the big dog, but the other countries as well are huge. Scott Bessent also says that Chinese exemptions show they want de-escalation on trade. Now, this is a pretty big headline as well from his speech. He says that, quote, we are anxious not to escalate with China. So they really want to get negotiations started. The only way I think that happens is if Trump pauses the tariffs on China. Like, you got to do something in good faith at this point for China to negotiate. Like, why would you negotiate with the US if you're China? The US has been essentially put in a trade embargo against your country. We've kind of like publicly stated that we want to form like a global blockade against China. Why are you, as if you're China, going to be the first ones to cave and start negotiations in any kind of serious way? You wouldn't do that. Bessent says that India might be one of the first trade deals that we'll sign. Bessent says this about Apple. He says maybe it speaks to China as an unreliable partner, which, I mean, is just a crazy thing to say when we've been the one that's, not to defend China here, because China has a lot of issues and they obviously don't play fair. But with everything that I just said, China is an unreliable partner to Apple. That just doesn't click in my brain. Now, CBC says a global recession is coming, that a worldwide economic slump could set in by summer unless Trump changes direction. U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent says we are doing bespoke deals with 18 trading partners. And he says that Trump to be intimately involved in every one. Bessent says we will see what happens with China when asked if he planned to call his counterpart. Bessent says, quote, maybe they'll call me one day. Bessent says that he is not worried about empty shelves, but he says that we'll see elasticities and we'll see replacements. I mean, that's a good way of saying maybe shortages. Bessent says the first trade deal might come as early as this week or next week. And Bessent says there is a tax meeting today, and I think that's one thing worth highlighting here. We've paid a lot of attention to the negatives, like around trade, which again makes sense because that's been just the daily headlines. But there's also corporate, taxes being lowered. There's the deregulation side, which is really what markets rallied on initially when Trump won the election. Okay, we still have those things in play, but until trade dies down and tensions die down, I don't think we're going to pay too much attention to deregulation or taxes. But it could be something that comes around like the end of this year where people say, wow, okay, we got through trade. Now we got deregulation. Now we got lower taxes. Maybe it's not as bad as we thought earlier in the year. IBM announced today that they plan to invest $150 billion in America over the next 5 years. The White House says that Bessent will brief the press on Tuesday. So maybe that is the first trade deal? We'll see. Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan has said that Gen Z has no reason to be depressed. As long as there's no nuclear war, they'll have an unbelievable life. Donald Trump says today that America can no longer subsidize Canada. And Ukraine has proposed a full ceasefire for at least 30 days. But the White House says that Trump wants a permanent Russia-Ukraine ceasefire. And Caroline Leavitt says that Trump is increasingly frustrated with Russia and Ukraine. Now, the ECB said today that they may cut rates more if the outlook shows an undershoot of 2% inflation. White House Press Secretary Leavitt says the entire team is working 24/7 to get trade deals done. And she says you'll be hearing more about trade deals this week. That is probably via Scott Bessent tomorrow. Now, this is not a great headline. Pakistan's defense minister says a military incursion by India is imminent. And the defense minister says in a normal armed conflict, both countries should refrain from using the nuclear option. So basically, Pakistan and India both have nuclear weapons and, well, a war is imminent, apparently. That's usually not a big comfort to markets. Nvidia is also dragging down the broader index today. Nvidia is down about 2.2%. Following headlines last night that Huawei is developing a new AI chip to compete with Nvidia, at least in China. And ECB's Rain says we should not rule out rate cuts below the neutral rate. Japan's economy minister Akizawa says no change to our stance. We are demanding full removal of U.S. tariffs. China's foreign ministry says the U.S. and China have not conducted negotiations or consultations on tariffs. Dallas Fed manufacturing index today came in at negative 35.8. The estimate was negative 15. Last month was negative 16.3. So yeah, manufacturing in that area is not going in the right direction. That's for sure. Now, as I said over this weekend, today was really the slow day, Monday. There was not a lot going on, not a whole lot for earnings. There's some we'll cover in just a moment. Tomorrow, you have larger economic data with JOLTS job openings. Here's the deal. If job openings go up, that's good. If job openings go down by a lot, that's not good. Because before you lay someone off, normally you remove your job, your hiring, okay? If you were looking to hire an employee, now you're looking to fire an employee, that you're no longer looking to hire an employee. So usually you take down your hiring signs before you start firing people. Okay, you're not expecting much of a change from last month as well, from February to March. This data is for March. So we'll see. If that comes down a lot, that's a bad sign for the jobs market. If it goes up, that's good. If it comes in line with expectations, well, that's good as well. You also get CB consumer confidence. You get S&P Case-Shiller home price year over year and month over month, wholesale inventories month over month, advanced data for March, and the goods trades balance, which will give you a new Atlanta Fed GDP Now update, which is currently negative 2.5%, which we do have GDP coming out this week. I believe that is on, is it Wednesday? Wednesday. And you're actually expecting a positive number. So based on tomorrow's data, it could influence how that GDP report comes out. Now here today in after hours, you have Waste Management, NXP, F5, Teradyne, Nucor, Transocean, Welltower, and Cadence that report earnings. The only one that's really important is NXP because they do a lot of business with Apple. So NXP, NXPI, if it's good or bad, could move the needle for Apple. Keep that in mind. And then really throughout this week, I mean, there's going to be a ton of earnings, a ton of economic data. You can see on screen, pause the video. You have Microsoft, you have Meta Wednesday and after hours. Thursday and after hours is really the big day. You have Amazon and Apple because these are, they got to be two of the most heavily tariffed companies if these tariffs go into effect or if the tariffs are too high. They're also very sensitive to the American consumer. Okay. Now, what's also going to be a big story throughout this week is generally the consumer. What does SoFi, PayPal, UPS say about consumer spending? What does Visa say about consumer spending? How is Starbucks doing? Okay. There's other names like McDonald's Thursday morning. Like, what do they say about the consumer? Are consumers pulling back? Does this look like a recession? Or are things fine? That's a big question that we really need answered for markets to continue to move higher. And you need something that sounds okay at the very least. The CNN Fear and Greed Index is sitting at 36 today, which is about in the midpoint of fear. Market momentum, extreme fear, stock price strength, extreme fear, stock price breadth is neutral. Put and call options, fear, market volatility is neutral, safe haven demand in fear, and junk bond demand currently in greed. If we take a look at the percent of stocks trading above their 50-day moving average, you're sitting at 34.41%. You're actually up today. About 2.3% of all stocks are breaking above their 50-day moving average. That's pretty good. You're still on the low side of, the last 5 years, but you're getting back into more of a mid-range, which is anywhere from 50 to 65. And again, tomorrow is going to be a huge catalyst with the goods trades balance, retail inventories, wholesale inventories. That's going to give you a new GDP projection for Q1 because this data is for March, which is still Q1. JOLTS job openings, though, is going to be the biggest catalyst. Again, if that comes in higher, that's good. If it comes in lower or too low, that's bad. Best case scenario is probably in line with expectations. Okay, showing that the labor market, it's not falling apart. That's really what you want to see tomorrow. You do have the Dallas Fed Services Index as well, but that will be really not nearly as important given the other data that we have. Let me know your thoughts on all of this down below in the comment section. Ladies and gentlemen, are you bullish? Are you bearish on our markets? Do you think a pause on China tariffs could be coming soon? Let me know down below in the comment section. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.